Ian. Hello.
Oh, Chris.
Ian?
Chris, you're the first voice I've heard in days.
Ian, is that
Are
you?
you here to rescue me?
Ian, I can't see. Oh, I just have my eyes closed.
You're not here to rescue me, are you?
No, Ian.
We're gonna die down here.
Trapped just like you. That
die
maniac
down here.
dare killer had me in the other room. He's torturing me endlessly.
I know.
Endlessly.
He hasn't let me access Netflix or Shudder or any of my video
Such
services.
an animal. I asked him for the
Torture.
Wi-Fi password, and he said, "I don't have Wi-Fi." Horrible. The worst of all, he made me do it. He made me do
Chris.
the dare.
Oh, Chris, what did he make you do? You can tell me. There's nobody watching.
He dared me to resist drugs and violence.
Well, that's not gonna happen. I hope you told him that.
Told him, I love the drugs.
I mean, you love drugs. Maybe you
drugs.
could give up the drugs, but you are not giving up violence. You are straight addicted to that shit, son.
What do we do? How do we get out of here?
Is us getting out of here contingent on you quitting drugs and violence? Because now we're fucked. We might as well just do some of your ass cocaine and just fucking ride it out till we die. That's all we got left, brother. What do you say? Break out that ass cocaine.
It's just a turd.
Yeah. I mean, we've done grosser things.
I have been getting into scat recently.
Okay. Go on. Do it.
Bada 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 beep bop bop bida bop. All right.
Best skit we've ever done.
Ian.
Truth or dare?
That is the question. I choose the truth, Ian. I want the truth.
You can't handle the truth!
And what is the truth?
The truth is that we watched Dare tonight.
That is so true, Ian. That's not even funny. That's the truth. We did watch The Dare.
By one Giles Anderson.
Alderson?
Giles?
Anderson?
Giles?
Giles?
I don't know.
Giles. He is a British fellow, I think.
Yes.
British lad. I know that. Because I'm a big fan of his podcast.
Okay.
Which is
I thought that name sounded familiar.
which is
But I
the
couldn't figure out why.
yeah, it's called the Filmmakers Podcast.
Yes.
And it is a great podcast if you are a person who wants to be a filmmaker. Meaning,
Why are you having such a hard time
I was
with
looking
that?
for the word like
Inspiring?
Inspiring. That's the word. I was
Aspiring. Inspiring.
inspiring, transpiring, aspiring filmmakers.
Okay.
Very passionate fellas who are down to earth, and is really like this podcast is great compared to a lot of other filmmaking podcasts. I feel like there's a lot of good tips and stuff, and you get a lot of people who also are like of the same
Okay.
starting out genre. You know, what I mean, get their first feature out. What is going on? Why are you laughing at me?
I feel really bad shitting all over his movie
That's
now.
fine. So,
Because I know you're a big fan of this podcast.
I am a big fan of this podcast. That doesn't mean stuff. So, we watched The Dare, which is a feature film of him. It is a movie about people who get put into a room
Yes.
and tortured a bit by
So you have a borderline unrecognizable dead body.
Yes.
There's a woman, and Glenn Howerton and Carl Urban all trapped in a basement.
I can kind of see that. Yeah, that's not true. It's not those people, but they do sort of look like it. It is a very similar take on the Saw movie, or at least in some way it's
ballpark.
setups and it's gore type thing.
I would say, to me, this movie transitions from one genre to another.
Sure.
In that it starts out as your, like, basic confinement, like, trapped in a space kind of movie. Kind of a little bit combined with Saw in general, because there is, like, that torture porn aspect to it a little bit.
Yeah.
But then it transitions to a classic 80s supernatural style slasher movie. Partway through.
In what ways is it supernatural?
That would involve some spoilers.
Okay, we can get to that.
So we should get to that later.
All right. So, immediate thoughts for this movie from me. Positives are it is very well shot.
Yes.
It looks great.
Very competent.
Very competently
Audio is
made.
great. Production design is
Production
great.
quality is great.
The effects they go for all work out really
The effects
well.
are pretty good. Richard Brake
He's a great actor.
He's a great actor, and he does well in this movie.
Who you'll recognize as the creepy dude from the original The Rock Doom.
Yes. The Rock version of the Doom. And he's also in that terrible Rob Zombie movie. Which one? Because they're all terrible? I don't know!
Most importantly, he was the chemist in Mandy.
Yeah, it's true. So that stuff's all good. This movie fails for me on a bunch of spots. Narratively speaking, I think they chose the correct way to tell the story and keep it compelling. Okay. Meaning, once you put people in a room, one single room that has 4 walls that are black and sand on the ground, it's going to be hard to keep that visually interesting for the most part. Sure, you have movies like Cube that are kind of like a similar setup, but you're moving into these different rooms and things happen. This keeps jumping back and forth between timelines and people to keep you compelled and interested of what's going on.
Yeah, it does that competently.
And does that so the movie doesn't really get boring. That being said...
if you stayed in that one room, it'd be tougher for sure.
This movie harps on Saw quite a bit in its setup and then in its wants to be a torture porn movie. But it neither goes far enough in that aspect to be appealing to somebody who wants a torture porn movie and doesn't succeed in any way in creating any kind of like horror or tension for me.
I think if somebody likes this movie, and I think there are people who will like this movie, I think it's going for like a mix of genres. It's one of those types.
Okay.
Like it's not going hard at the torture porn. It's not going hard at the, the basement or the split style confinement type movie. It's not going hard at the slasher movie, but it is getting elements of all of these and mixing them together into a new brew. And sometimes we like movies that create a new brew of familiar tropes and styles.
So why don't you like it?
It felt very, at the end of the day, kind of generic. It didn't jump out at me. Like, everything was done good. But there's nothing about this movie that was great.
So you just mentioned that this is kind of like pitting a bunch of different genres together.
Yeah.
But when none of those really kind of raise above generic, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Because the sum of its parts didn't make it better.
And almost every movie we cover on this channel is worse than this movie.
Yeah.
In every way. But usually, like, the ones we really like do at least one thing really well.
So there's effective scenes in this movie that did kind of push boundaries for me, with Richard Brake kind of like abusing this kid in like a weird Stockholm syndrome kind of way. And that's very dark and bleak, and I think executed well. But the way that kid plays out in this storyline, and the twists are so generic and disappointing.
I think if there's one thing that was truly excellent about this film, it's Richard Brake, because he's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel you. So I feel like, we see, I don't know how to, we should just say we're going to talk spoilers, right? It's hard to talk about this.
Are we ready to get into spoilers?
It's hard to talk about this villain's arc without, because there's a bit of a reveal there.
Sure, but
I guess not that much of a reveal. You kind of see where it's coming from. But in any case, so there is a gap, much like Jesus. There is a gap that exists from a childhood up to a certain point to where we are seeing in the present day. And I think there's something missing from the middle that I needed to know. Like, how do you go from here? Which, admittedly, this kid had been traumatized and some bad things happened to him, but he seemed pretty in control of himself, to where we find him in the present day of this movie. I feel like there has to be something else in there. I didn't feel like that jump made a ton of sense to me. And there is a bit of a reveal in terms of how all the people in the room are connected. But when it was revealed, it is a pretty shocking reveal. Did we already say spoilers, or did we decide not to do any spoilers?
We can get into the spoilers here.
But in any case, when it happened, I was like, really? Come on now. And as the movie played out, I started to realize, okay, I guess I can now see why the connections were not made by the people in the room. But like when it was first revealed, I'm like, really? Y'all didn't see this? Okay.
So that is when... All right, let's just get into spoilers. Halfway into the movie,
maybe a little more.
It is revealed that all the people in the room know each other because during their childhood, they tortured this other kid. And then I rolled my eyes because it was like, how would you not know each other?
Yeah.
And
Same.
it was
you come to find out, they only spent a very short amount of time over a vacation together.
Right.
And haven't stayed in touch.
So the idea then is this kid being tortured by them, who is now being raised by this crazed, abusive man.
That they ultimately left him to.
They left him to, but he grows up. He could have gotten away, but he chooses to stay because of Stockholm Syndrome type things. Grows up to be this killer who wants to release the demons and the sin from these people.
Yeah.
That he remembers from their childhood from the 2 days, but
None of them recognize each other.
yeah, and it's like the real evil here is.
For him, to be fair, though, to give a little credit, for him that is probably the most pivotal day in his entire life. Whereas for them, it was all something they not only probably forgot, but would have rather forgotten. You know?
I know, but it's all so convenient. That's the thing, where it's like, okay, I guess if you buy into all that without rolling your eyes, that setup works. But for me, it was like, this is just too convenient and this wasn't impactful enough or something. Like, it just didn't land.
Yeah.
That it would have all culminated because of this one, the dare they did.
That being said, like, sometimes you see movies like this where it doesn't quite, and you think, oh, well, then so much better if they did. I don't think there was a better way to do it.
No.
You know, like if you rearrange the story a little bit, because you do have that element of jumping around in time. Like,
I mean, if the dare,
there's no way to project it.
Sure, if the dare that they did
projecting it.
and somehow made this kid lose his parents or something like that, which had the repercussions.
So, in movies in general, if it's not going to be the perfect storm to create the most unlikely scenario, why make the movie?
True.
To a certain degree.
But then,
now, I think this script presents a very specific challenge in that if you set it up in a way where it's more believable, you also project that twist a little bit more. Whereas you just have to throw the twist at you, and then eventually they get you around and okay, I see how
that comes
together. I guess it
together.
Makes sense, but you've already kind of lost me.
Well, and the problem is the twist undermines the characters, meaning the main guy who's you're supposed to be rooting for to get out of this room.
Though?
I didn't because he's a dickhead who tortured this kid, just like all these people. And so it's
even
like
before that, I didn't like.
No,
him.
I didn't really like him either.
He's being a dipshit to the other people in the room, which tough situation to be in. To some degree, I get it.
I think that undermines the movie quite a bit when like you showing. I guess Saul kind of does that, but you still feel more empathy for the characters.
Yeah.
This, I didn't care. And I think it's important that I care about this guy because that's where the tension lies.
If there was a way to make this movie, and I don't think this would have been easy to do. So, you know, this is me just casting stones, not having made this film, which is easy to do.
You have a glass house?
Like, yes. So if you could make it so that he is a sympathetic character through 90% of the movie, and then only at the end reveal. I don't know. This script, I don't think would have worked that way.
I don't know if it would have worked, but it would have been more effective that way, narratively.
In at least one way. But the way that to me, like, especially when you've narrowed it down to just one member of the original group still remaining, it turns into an 80s slasher, like Jason, Michael Myers type movie. Because you start doing that thing where he's stalking them. Like, they're running away, albeit falling all over the place because they're injured, and he's just slowly walking after them. And, like, you can't kill, like, eventually, he kills him, but the body's never found.
Yeah.
And then you've got the sequel tag at the end as well. And to me, it felt very much like a throwback. And that's why I'm, like, I'm a little nervous about putting out this review, because I think what's going to happen with this one is the same thing that happened to me with Terrifier, where I didn't like it, but then everybody fucking loved it, because people do love their slasher movies. Whereas I'm mostly bored by slasher movies at this point.
I figured out what he was doing from a kid to now. Working out.
Yeah.
The dude was jacked.
But they did establish, even as a child, that his father figure was, you got to be strong.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just missing something there for me.
The chemistry of all the parts. All the parts work. I don't think they came together to really create something masterful, though. But I think the skill to make something masterful was all there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I dare you to leave a comment down below.
Tell us why we're idiots and wrong about this movie.
Yeah, like you usually do.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Patreon.com.
I don't do that.
No? Okay. That's gonna do it. Not gonna do it. That's gonna do it for this episode. We will catch you here next time. Good.
One day.
Bye.
One of these days we're going to be good at
No.
ending these videos, but it is not this day!